16 videos, 7 levels over 1 hour. I have scoured the depths of the internet, trawled the forums that most people won't even visit, all to discover videos hidden in the darkest archives of the web, many of which people thought were lost forever. We'll start with content that is disturbing on the surface level, and end up so far down that you're going to wonder if what you're seeing is even real. Let's dive right in. Love ya. One of TikTok's strangest accounts is called Marpin y la Rana, a Spanish-language page centered on a life-sized wax figure named Juanito. The name roughly translates to Marpin and the Frog, although the meaning behind it is unclear. In the videos, Juanito is positioned around an ordinary home and appears in different outfits alongside unusual props. Occasionally, another figure joins him. Over the footage, a man's deep voice recites abstract poetry, philosophy, and social observations in Spanish.
Hola, si queréis gozar de la vida, uniros a TikTok. Os esperamos en Libre.
Some uploads have attracted tens of thousands of likes, allowing the account to surface unexpectedly in viewers' recommendation feeds. However, the project appears to predate TikTok by more than a decade. The profile leads to a blogspot page containing posts from at least 2010 until 2023. The writing shifts between dark poetry, political criticism, existential reflections, and intensely personal material. It discusses greed, violence, colonialism, mortality, and illness. Viewers have proposed several explanations. Some believe it is a long-running surrealist art project. However, none of this has been confirmed. Juanito's uncanny appearance obviously doesn't help, but the creepiness comes from more than just the way he looks. You get the sense that you are in someone's private world, one that has existed for many years, a world that would still be happening even if there was no TikTok, no Blogspot, or no audience at all. Makes you wonder what people on your street get up to in their homes. Maybe they have their own Juanito just waiting to meet you. I'm really quite sad about this one. This segment was meant to be longer, but the TikTok account was made private while I was making the video. I was actually going to make this video yesterday and the account was still public. So near, yet so far. Instead, I have had to collate as much content as possible from other sources, much of which came from a YouTube channel called Mary Mogg. On the 28th of April 2000, 22-year-old diving instructor Yuri Lipsky entered the Blue Hole near Dahab, Egypt, carrying a camera mounted to his helmet. The site is a vast underwater sinkhole descending into darkness beside the Red Sea, and it had already earned a grim reputation among divers. Lipsky intended to film its famous underwater arch. An experienced technical diver, Tarek Omar, had reportedly warned him that attempting it safely would require specialist training. Lipsky had only a short time in Dahab and entered the water without it. The recovered footage begins as an ordinary dive, but Yuri soon separates from his companion and starts descending far too quickly. The water grows darker, the surface disappears. His breathing becomes the only human sound as the depth continues to increase. By the time he reached the seabed more than 100 meters below the surface, escape was no longer a simple matter of swimming upwards. At that depth, breathing ordinary air can cause severe nitrogen narcosis, producing confusion, panic, hallucinations, and dangerously impaired judgment. The pressure itself also makes every attempt to regain control more difficult. The camera shows Yuri trying to inflate his buoyancy compensator, but he does not rise. He is alone on the bottom, surrounded by darkness, with no visible route back and nobody close enough to reach him. Eventually, in a state of apparent panic and disorientation, he removes his regulator. Tarek Omar recovered Yuri's remains the following day and found the helmet camera still intact. Yuri's own mother later watched the recording, something that is almost unfathomable. Perhaps it gave her closure, or a strange sense of comfort. Who knows? The footage is almost unbearable. Above the surface, the world continued normally. Beneath it, one man was falling farther from light, farther from help, until there was nowhere left to go, and no way back. On the 15th of January 2023, Yeti Airlines Flight 691 departed Kathmandu for Pokhara with 68 passengers and 4 crew members on board. It was a short domestic journey, made in clear weather, and the aircraft was already descending towards a recently opened international airport when passenger Sonu Jaiswal began live streaming from inside the cabin. Sonu was traveling with 3 friends. In the recording, he turns the camera towards himself and smiles. Other passengers sit quietly behind him. Sunlight fills the aircraft, and through the window, buildings and roads pass beneath the wing as the plane approaches Pokhara. Nothing in this Facebook livestream suggests that every person being recorded has only moments remaining. The change is almost instantaneous. The cabin begins to shake. Screaming is heard. The picture violently overturns, and then the camera is engulfed by flames, while the live stream continues recording. Everyone aboard Flight 691 would not see another day. The aircraft came down beside the Seti Gandaki River, between Pokhara's old airport and the new airport it had been attempting to reach. Ground footage showed the plane flying with its nose raised before banking sharply to the left and disappearing from view. It was Nepal's deadliest domestic aviation disaster and the deadliest recorded accident involving an ATR-72. Investigators recovered both flight recorders the following day. Their findings revealed that the aircraft's 2 propellers had entered a feathered position around 1 minute before impact. Feathering turns the propeller blades so that they produce minimal resistance when an engine is no longer operating. It is useful during an actual engine failure, but on Flight 691, both engines were still functioning. With both propellers feathered, however, they were producing effectively no thrust. The error appears to have occurred when Captain Anju Katiwada, who was flying the aircraft, requested that the flaps be extended. Captain Kamal KC, who was monitoring the flight and providing instruction, apparently moved the nearby condition levers instead. Although the controls were differently shaped and operated, they sat beside one another on the center pedestal. The cockpit voice recorder captured the crew completing landing procedures without recognizing what had happened. Captain Anju stated twice that the engines were producing no power. The pilots pushed the power levers forward, eventually selecting maximum power, but the incorrectly positioned condition levers remained unnoticed. By then, the aircraft was low, slow, and committed to its approach. Without thrust, it lost airspeed. Its nose remained high, the left wing dropped, and the plane entered an aerodynamic stall, too close to the ground for recovery. The final investigation found that the misplaced levers were the immediate cause, but the disaster involved more than one isolated mistake. The flight had changed its intended landing direction shortly before arrival, creating a shortened approach. The aircraft did not meet normal stabilization requirements. Investigators also identified a high cockpit workload, inadequate training, poor crew coordination, failures to follow standard procedures, and a lack of sterile cockpit discipline. The approach was also being used as an unplanned training opportunity. Captain Kamal had landed on the new runway only twice before and had decided to familiarize Captain Anju with it during the flight. Tragically, Anju's husband, who had also flown for Yeti Airlines, had lost his life in another company aircraft accident in 2006. She had continued her own aviation career afterwards and was reportedly close to qualifying as a captain. Sonu's recording does not capture any of the technical nightmare unfolding inside the cockpit. From the cabin, everything still appears totally ordinary. The passengers cannot see the lever positions. They cannot know that the propellers are no longer producing thrust, or that the crew are attempting to understand why the engines are not responding. They are simply sitting in their seats, looking through the windows and waiting to arrive. Then the ordinary world vanishes in an instant. There is no gradual understanding and no meaningful time to react. One moment is sunlight, conversation, and a normal man filming his journey. The next is confusion, screaming, and fire. In that moment, Sonu's place in the world changes, and he is now an entry in a very, very dark area of aviation history.
Kung kawin ito ano to, tiang to.
Tiang bang kawin?
Ya, kung kawin eh.
Mulai ka sudah mulai ditangkap sudah.
Menaik kalap liko.
I can't really tell you how weird this video makes me feel. Let's just sit with it for a minute. Let me know what you think is going on here. Comment what you think this thing is. I really, really hate it. The truth is that this was just part of a promo shoot for a music festival in 2008. I just don't know how they could make it look so cursed. Anyway, moving on. Want to know the real reason why I stopped going into the woods? This pretty much explains it.
Where'd you just come from? I took the wrong way. Oh my goodness.
Did you see my other two guys? What?
What?
Did you see my other two guys? Did we see your other two guys? No. You're supposed to go that way.
No, we're not supposed to go that way.
No. Want to meet them?
No, we don't want to meet him.
I don't want to meet them.
How about not? I don't know.
Now, this video feels real to me. I get the impression that the people being followed by the face-painted lady are reacting pretty legitimately. I mean, weird stuff does happen in the world, and the general consensus in forums and comments is that the lady is either high or in some kind of mental distress. I'm just suspicious though, and I knew that the cropped video that I found on Twitter couldn't be the original.
What? Oh, why am I... Help me. Oh my goodness. Can't get over that? No! She said, here I come.
It took me a little while, but I'm sorry to say, this video is a hoax. A big fat phony, if you're a Family Guy fan. The original video is from a YouTube channel called Don't Blink Paranormal, and instead of it being 2 minutes long and square, it's actually over half an hour and widescreen.
She's trying to speak to her channel right now.
YouTubers, should I wear my orange outfit with this? Like the blue?
I feel like the worse quality the video became from being ripped again and again, and the further it moved from the original context, the more disturbing it became. I kinda wish I hadn't found out the truth on this one. Some grape juice, a spray bottle, and some black snot. Interesting. Not everything has to be a murder, nor the grainy footage capturing someone's final moments, for it to be really, truly disturbing. This video is one of the worst things that I have ever seen, and I've really seen some crazy things, trust me. This unearthed VHS tape shows a man named Arthur Bloom. It is from the glory days of public access TV, a segment on a show called Something's Happening. He has found a cure for a problem that I'm sure is plaguing us all, the problem of toxic mucus. I mean, I can't really describe what you're about to see. It's bad, and you have been warned.
Grape juice. This is what we use to extract the mucus. I'm going left and right inside the mouth, left and right, and this is liquefying this mucus, just liquefying. Can you believe that this is liquid mucus? The first time in history of the world that a new substance has been found in the mouth. This could probably stop babies from having birth defects. Remember, this was in my mouth only 10 minutes ago. Now watch this. We're going to burn this. We're going to put this on this rock. Now we're going to use the torch. We use the butane torch. It takes a lot of heat to make this burn. Now watch it burn. Watch it sizzle. Watch it sizzle. If that's not fat, what is it? If that's not fat, doctors, what is that? Now see the flame. You see the toxic air backfiring? That's toxic air burning. Please believe me, the world is dying. The world is being killed by this stuff.
In February 1996, Brazilian television reporter Lacia Martins was covering the annual grape festival in Caxias do Sul. It was raining, he was holding a wired microphone, and directly in front of him was an illuminated metal display containing an enormous bunch of grapes. Nobody had warned him that something inside the display had gone dangerously wrong. They probably should have, as rain and electricity do not go together.
This is a grape, a new variety, and here is Ruby, which is a mutation of the Italy grape.
These are mostly table grapes. Here next to it there are Pederneras, here for example. There's... Oh! What's that?
So here. We'll be back shortly with sports.
The moment Lacia touched the wire that was supporting the grapes, approximately 220 volts travelled through him. He was thrown backwards, briefly lost consciousness, and fractured a rib when he hit the ground. That backwards fall may have saved his life. Lacia later explained that had he collapsed forwards, his hand could have remained locked around the electrified wire. Instead, being thrown away from it broke the connection. What eventually became one of Brazilian television's most famous viral clips had come remarkably close to recording a man's final moments live on air. The precise electrical fault was never publicly established, but the metal frame display had apparently become energized. The wet conditions and the grounded microphone in Lacia's other hand may have provided electricity with a particularly effective route through his body. Lacia simply reaches towards some grapes during an ordinary television segment, and within a fraction of a second, the situation becomes potentially and very nearly fatal. It is an uncomfortable reminder that life does not always provide a dramatic build-up. Sometimes the distance between an unremarkable moment and the possible end of everything is no greater than reaching out and touching the wrong object. On February 16, 2018, hotel cameras in Taipei recorded 20-year-old Amber Poon Hugh Wing returning from a night market with her boyfriend, Chan Tong Kai, and with them was a newly purchased pink suitcase. That suitcase will become very important very soon, and sadly you can probably guess exactly why. Amber and Chan had travelled from Hong Kong for a Valentine's Day holiday. They had met while working part-time, started dating during the summer of 2017, and regularly shared photographs of their relationship online. She had told her parents only that she was travelling with a friend. Amber was also 3 months pregnant. The couple were due to fly home the following evening. At 1:21 in the morning, Amber sent her mother a WhatsApp message confirming she would return later that day. It was the final message her family received from her. Inside the hotel room, an argument began. Amber told Chan that her unborn baby had been conceived with a former boyfriend. Chan reacted violently, striking her against a wall before strangling her during a struggle that lasted approximately 10 minutes. After Amber's time on this earth ended, Chan placed her body inside the pink suitcase. He separated her possessions into bags, keeping her bank card, telephone and camera before going to sleep in the same room. The following morning, the hotel's CCTV recorded Chan leaving alone. He was pulling the suitcase behind him. He carried it onto the Taipei metro and travelled for around 40 minutes before getting off at Zhuhai Station. Near the Tamsui River, he removed Amber from the suitcase and concealed her among bushes beside a trail. He discarded the suitcase elsewhere, withdrew money from Amber's account, and boarded a flight back to Hong Kong that evening. For more than 2 weeks, Amber's parents did not know what had happened. They reported her missing on March 5th, after discovering travel documents identifying the hotel where she had stayed. Her father flew to Taiwan and began searching for her. The hotel footage provided the first clear indication that Amber had never left voluntarily. It showed the couple arriving together, followed by Chan departing with a suitcase that appeared difficult to move. Taiwanese authorities contacted police in Hong Kong, and Chan was brought in for questioning. He confessed and revealed where Amber had been left. On March 13th, following a 3-hour search, investigators found her body. Yet the confession created an extraordinary problem. The attack had happened in Taiwan, placing it outside the jurisdiction of Hong Kong's courts. Hong Kong and Taiwan also had no extradition agreement, meaning Chan could not simply be returned to face a murder prosecution. He was instead imprisoned for offences connected to using Amber's money. After his release in October 2019, he publicly apologized and claimed he would surrender in Taiwan. Political and legal disputes prevented that from happening. Attempts to close the extradition loophole produced consequences far beyond the original case. The proposed law would also have permitted transfers to mainland China, provoking widespread fear across Hong Kong. Massive demonstrations followed, developing into the months-long protests of 2019. A hotel camera had captured Chan pulling a pink suitcase through a corridor. That footage helped reveal what happened to Amber, but years later, the man who confessed to ending her life had still not faced a murder trial.
And we would talk to you this day of love. We would speak to you of love. Love not as you know it, as this moment, but we would speak to you of that infinite oscillation, the source of life, the source of all living things, which is love.
The Unarius Academy of Science left behind one of the strangest collections of homemade footage anywhere on the internet. Its videos resemble fragments from a forgotten late-night television channel. Elderly performers in glittering robes, cardboard spacecraft, painted alien landscapes and solemn speeches about reincarnation, distant planets and humanity's future. Unarius was founded in California during the 1950s. By Ernest and Ruth Norman. Ernest described himself as a clairvoyant capable of receiving messages from extraterrestrial beings and historical figures. Ruth recorded his teachings, helped publish their books, and eventually became far more visually associated with the movement. After Ernest died in 1971, Ruth became its leader and primary channeler. She adopted the name Uriel, which followers said represented universal, radiant, infinite, eternal light, and claimed to be an archangel connected to an interplanetary confederation. Wearing elaborate wigs, illuminated gowns, and royal costumes, she delivered teachings from a gold-colored throne, decorated with peacock feathers. Ruth predicted that benevolent beings known as the Space Brothers would arrive on Earth in a fleet of spacecraft. Unarius purchased 67 acres near Jamul, California, intended as their landing site. Followers prepared a welcome banner, arranged transportation, and expected the visitors to introduce advanced technology while ending disease, conflict, and crime. The landing did not happen. Ruth revised the expected date several times, eventually settling on 2001. She explained one of her failed predictions through a past life memory in which she had been Isis and experienced a traumatic event shortly before another extraterrestrial arrival. This belief in past lives also produced Unarius's extraordinary film archive.
Why do you think I sent you to that pleasure planet? To have fun? You come back a complete robot. Not my robot, somebody else's robot. When I send you for information, I send you for information. Volna does not go to the pleasure planet for fun, for recreation. An idiot agent, like that little joiner, scrambles your brains up so you don't remember your name even.
Beginning in the late 1970s, members created more than 100 television programs and several feature-length productions. These were not presented simply as fictional entertainment. They were described as psychodramas, through which followers could recreate earlier incarnations and release the emotional consequences attached to them. Members dressed as rulers, scientists, alien warriors, and creatures from distant worlds. Elaborate trials were staged to confront actions supposedly committed millions of years earlier. The productions used hand-painted scenery, homemade costumes, public locations, and improvised special effects. Despite their limited budgets, the participants performed everything with absolute seriousness.
But you didn't know I was really 40 years old, did you? 40-year-old lady. And I can say you did it to me. The managers did it to me. They pushed and they prodded. And they wouldn't let me be. They wouldn't let me be myself.
It can look playful, colourful, and almost innocent, yet the performers appear to believe they are reconstructing genuine events from their own histories. The vast distance between what the viewer sees and what the participants must have believed gives every awkward costume and painted spaceship an unexpectedly weird vibe. Ruth died in 1993, 8 years before the revised arrival date. Unarius continued without her and still operates in El Cajon. Its films survived through public access television, bootleg recordings, exhibitions, and documentaries. Watching them now feels less like discovering an abandoned television program and more like opening an archive from a complete alternative reality, one its creators believed was every bit as real as our own. Rhiannon White had always been the person who assumed the best of others. The 27-year-old mother was known for her brightly coloured hair, infectious personality, and determination to make people happy, regardless of how difficult her own day had been. She was the second youngest of 5 siblings, and her family described her as brave, quirky, and almost relentlessly kind. Her sister Alex said Rhiannon would have given someone the shirt from her back if she believed they needed it. In July 2024, Rhiannon began working at the Park-In Hotel in Walsall. The building was temporarily being used to accommodate asylum seekers, and she quickly became familiar with its residents. Rather than keeping her distance, Rhiannon would sit with them, listen to their stories, and offer support whenever she could. Her family occasionally questioned whether the job was safe. Rhiannon reassured them that security staff were present and that someone would often accompany her to the nearby Bescot Stadium railway station after a late shift. From there, the train journey home to her mother took only 3 minutes. On Sunday, October 20th, Rhiannon worked from 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night. During the evening, several colleagues noticed one hotel resident watching her and other members of staff. His name was Dung Chol Majek. He had arrived in Britain less than 3 months earlier and was living inside the hotel while his asylum application was processed. His staring was described as intimidating and unsettling. At 11 o'clock, Rhiannon finished her shift, stepped outside for a vape, and began the familiar walk across the road towards the station. This time, she was alone. Majek left the hotel behind her. Cameras recorded Rhiannon crossing the car park and approaching the station. Majek followed at a distance, moving behind her across the footbridge. As they continued, the space between them gradually narrowed. Rhiannon called Emma Cowley, a childhood friend she had known since they were 5 years old. The two spoke as Rhiannon entered the station and made her way towards platform 2. It was late and the platform was deserted. The security cameras covering that particular area were not working. Emma remained on the phone. At approximately 11:15, she suddenly heard a high-pitched scream. A second terrified scream followed, then a long breath. After that, there was silence. Emma tried to contact Rhiannon again, while simultaneously calling emergency services and alerting her mother. Nobody yet knew exactly where Rhiannon was or what had happened. The attack lasted around 90 seconds. Majek had followed Rhiannon onto the empty platform, carrying a crosshead screwdriver. He struck her 23 times, concentrating much of the attack around her head. Rhiannon attempted to protect herself, but she was left critically injured inside the platform shelter. Majek took her phone, switched it off, and walked away. At 11:19, a camera captured him crossing a bridge over the River Tame. Rhiannon's phone was thrown into the water below. The sharp implement used during the attack was discarded separately and has never been recovered. 3 minutes later, a train entered Bescott Stadium station. A member of the railway crew found Rhiannon slumped inside the shelter and raised the alarm. A worker from the hotel helped as emergency teams arrived. Rhiannon was taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Her family were initially warned that she might have only hours remaining. She never regained consciousness, but continued fighting for 3 days, giving those closest to her time to sit beside her and say goodbye. While paramedics worked to save Rhiannon, Majek continued through Walsall. He purchased 3 cans of extra-strength beer and returned to the hotel shortly after midnight. He entered a third-floor room, wearing flip-flops and emerged in white trainers. Before long, he was outside in the car park with other residents. A 9-second mobile phone recording captured him dancing and laughing. Blue emergency lights could be seen flashing in the distance from the station where Rhiannon had been found. Majek had brought the speaker supplying the music. He was arrested inside the hotel several hours later. Rhiannon's DNA was discovered beneath one of his fingernails. Her red DNA was also found on his jacket, trousers, footwear, and a ring he had been wearing. The clothing matched the figure recorded following her to the station, leaving the platform and disposing of her phone. Majek denied everything. Even when shown recordings of a man wearing his distinctive jacket, he claimed it was somebody else. When asked how Rhiannon's DNA had reached his hand, he insisted he had never touched her. No motive has ever been established. In October 2025, Majek was convicted of Rhiannon's murder. He was later sentenced to life imprisonment and ordered to serve at least 29 years. The judge concluded that the attack had involved planning, sustained brutality, and a disturbing composure afterwards. Rhiannon left behind a 5-year-old son. Her sister Alex is now raising him and was forced to explain why his mother would never come home. At first, the family told him that his mother's brain had become too poorly for the doctors to repair. Later, they explained that someone had deliberately hurt her. He has since said that he wants to become a brain doctor so he can save people with injuries like his mother's. Heartbreaking. The YouTube channel Vinduma contains only 4 videos, uploaded between 2009 and 2011. On the surface, it looks like an abandoned collection of low-quality clips, probably from Brisbane, Australia. But one upload gives the entire channel a much darker atmosphere. The video is titled "Following a Teeny Bopper Home." Its description simply reads, "He was very scared, LOL." Filmed at night, it shows a young person walking along a main road, while the camera follows from a distance. The person appears to notice that they are being watched. They then suddenly begin to run away, fast, across a road. I think it looks like they timed it so that a car passed behind them, separating themselves from the watcher. Rather than calling out or explaining exactly what he was doing, the filmer retreats into the darkness behind a sign. The recording abruptly ends there. That abrupt ending is what really adds to the mystery of this whole thing. Did the person escape? Did the filmer stop following? Or did whatever was happening continue beyond the camera's view? The other uploads strengthen the impression of someone who preferred to remain outside events, silently observing.
Do you feel anything, baby?
One shows students apparently messing around, maybe in class or maybe as part of pre-drinks. It's kinda hard to tell.
Alright, tomorrow tonight. See you, my mum. What, sister? Huh? I'll see you tomorrow tonight.
Another captures 2 girls in school uniforms singing and joking. Even footage from an above and beyond performance at Brisbane's Family nightclub on September 16th, 2011 feels strangely detached, filmed from within the crowd without interaction. There is no evidence that anything criminal happened, and the uploads may have perfectly innocent explanations. Context from nearly 2 decades ago is almost completely absent. But looking only at what remains online, the channel creates the deeply uncomfortable image of a watcher someone who films, follows and disappears without ever explaining why. On the evening of March 27, 2014, 21-year-old Sophie Colombert finished a 3-hour lecture at Griffith University's Nathan campus in Brisbane. She was nearing the end of a master's degree in international business, achieving strong grades while completing an internship. That Thursday had begun like many others. A camera inside her apartment lift recorded her leaving in the morning, dressed in a beige top, dark jeans and black ankle boots. Hours later, another camera captured the moment that would define the case. At around 9 o'clock that night, Sophie stepped off a bus at the Queensland Cultural Centre. Heavy rain was falling across the city. She carried a large cloth shoulder bag and raised an umbrella above her head. Before leaving the terminal, she turned towards a friend and gave a final wave goodbye. Then she began walking home. Sophie lived less than 1 kilometre away, across the Brisbane River in the View Apartments. Her route followed the Riverside Boardwalk, a path surrounded by bridges, museums and security cameras. During the day, it was busy with cyclists, commuters and visitors. At night, much of the walkway remained open and illuminated. But near the William Jolly Bridge, the route changed. Trees obscured the view. The boardwalk entered a darker, more isolated section between the river and the park. Because of the rain, fewer people than usual were outside. Cameras followed Sophie for much of her journey, but none captured the moment she disappeared. She never reached the bridge leading home. At around 6 o'clock the following morning, someone walking through Kurilpa Park approached a rotunda close to the river. Sophie was lying there without her clothing, partially covered by newspapers and a jacket. Some people who passed the structure apparently assumed she was sleeping rough and continued on their way. Eventually, a homeless man checked on her, discovered that she had no pulse and raised the alarm. Attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. The young woman's identity was not immediately known. She still wore several distinctive pieces of jewellery, including a silver bracelet and a skull ring. Photographs of those items were released publicly. In France, Sophie's boyfriend, Boris, recognized them and contacted authorities. Her family, living in the alpine village of Saint-Julien-Mont-Denis, received the news thousands of miles away. Around 60 officers searched the park, examined the riverside and collected recordings from businesses and council cameras. Divers entered the Brisbane River. Bins were searched. Nearby buildings were visited, and police returned overnight to question anyone using the pathway when Sophie had walked through it. Her clothing, shoulder bag, phone, iPad and wallet were missing. An umbrella resembling hers was recovered from the river, although it could not initially be confirmed as Sophie's. The absence of her belongings suggested that whoever approached her had tried to scatter anything connecting the attack to the park.
Foot patrols have been bolstered around the park and officers are interviewing walkers in the hope of finding a new lead. News of the murder has made headlines in Sophie's hometown in northern France. Overseas reports are calling her death mysterious. Back home, uni students from across Brisbane are planning a vigil in the coming days.
We're deeply saddened by this and we're having this vigil next Thursday night in memory of her, to honour her.
The recordings gave investigators a detailed account of Sophie's day, but stopped before the moment they needed most. They showed her leaving home, travelling to university, returning to South Bank and walking alone beside the river. No attacker appeared beside her. There was only Sophie, moving steadily towards the place where the cameras lost sight of her.
And we're currently asking for the public, in particular a certain person who we believe was at the scene around the time of, we believe, when Sophie was killed, and that person we wish to give to the public through the media, if I may. His name's Benjamin James Millwood. He is 25 years of age. He's 180 centimetres, proportionate build. He has a dragon tattoo on the left side of his chest. Short, fair hair, hazel eyes. This person has come to our notice through speaking to other witnesses and examining CCTV in the area.
10 days after the attack, police arrested 25-year-old Benjamin James Millwood in Coffs Harbour across the state border in New South Wales. Millward had been staying at a men's shelter close to Kurilpur Park. On the night Sophie disappeared, he failed to return before curfew. He had consumed alcohol and used stimulant substances before encountering her on the boardwalk. Millward admitted that he grabbed Sophie as she walked home, seriously violated her, and repeatedly struck her. He left her in the rotunda, covered her with his jacket and newspapers, threw her belongings into the river, and fled Queensland. Sophie remained alive for several hours after he abandoned her, but the extensive injuries to her head proved unsurvivable. More than 2 years later, Millward pleaded guilty to murder and the extreme violation. He received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Sophie's family travelled from France for the sentencing. They described a woman who brought happiness to those around her and thanked the people of Brisbane who supported them. More than 2,000 people joined a memorial march and candlelight vigil in April 2014, walking from King George Square to the park, where Sophie had been found, in her French hometown. Around 1,200 people later followed her casket through the village as a brass band played Chopin's funeral march. The final CCTV footage remains painfully ordinary. A student steps from a bus, lifts an umbrella against the rain, and waves goodbye before beginning the short walk home. The cameras recorded almost the entire journey. They simply could offer no protection against the horrors of fellow man.
In this, and talk about why it's important to get these business leaders involved.
Well, this is our community, and we want to come together. We want to share information that can help us grow and develop to provide a better experience. We're saying tourism. We want the people that come here to say that was...
On the morning of August 26, 2015, viewers of a local Virginia news program watched what appeared to be an ordinary live interview from the edge of Smith Mountain Lake. Reporter Alison Parker was speaking with Vicky Gardner, the executive director of the Regional Chamber of Commerce, about events planned for the lake's 50th anniversary. Behind the camera was photojournalist Adam Ward. The segment was light, routine, and being broadcast shortly before 7 in the morning. Then, without warning, a series of deafening blasts interrupted the conversation. Alison attempted to move away as Adam's camera dropped towards the ground. For several seconds, the live broadcast continued transmitting confused images and sound before the station returned to anchor Kimberly McBroom in the studio. She appeared unsure of what had happened, initially considering whether the noises could have come from a vehicle backfiring nearby. Alison, aged 24, and Adam, aged 27, both had their time on this earth ended at the scene. Vicky was struck in the back after curling into a protective position. Despite suffering severe internal injuries, she survived after undergoing emergency surgery. The person responsible was quickly identified as Vesta Lee Flanagan II, a former WDBJ reporter who had worked professionally under the name Bryce Williams. Flanagan had been dismissed from the station in 2013, following repeated conflicts and concerns about his behaviour. Adam had reportedly filmed the moment police escorted him from the building after that dismissal. The attack was already extraordinary because it occurred during a live television broadcast, but what happened online afterwards made it even more disturbing. Flanagan had recorded the incident from his own perspective using a mobile phone. The footage showed him approaching the interview and pointing a black object towards Alison for several seconds without anyone reacting. The television lights reportedly prevented Vicky from seeing him clearly. He briefly lowered it, raised it again, and began the attack. Several hours later, while police were searching for him, Flanagan uploaded the recording to his Facebook and Twitter accounts. People scrolling through social media were suddenly confronted with footage of a real attack, sometimes through autoplay and without meaningful warning. The platform suspended his accounts, but copies had already begun spreading. News organizations then faced the question of whether showing the material informed the public or simply helped fulfill the attacker's apparent desire for attention. Flanagan was eventually located during a police pursuit. His vehicle left the road, and he was found critically injured inside. He later died in hospital. The original live segment remains one of the most surreal and horrifying things ever captured on live TV. Most of us get used to living in a safe bubble, so seeing a normal situation turn bad in real time is jarring and exposing. On the evening of August 26, 2023, 25-year-old Mitchell Dang stood in front of her camera and showed viewers the outfit she had chosen for a night in downtown Atlanta, something casual and comfortable enough to spend several hours dancing. Mitchell appeared excited. Before ending the recording, she explained exactly what she planned to do. She was going to dance her heart away. 4 mornings later, an employee inside a parking garage across from the Fulton County Courthouse noticed an overpowering smell near the elevator. He initially suspected that an animal had died somewhere inside the building. As he moved closer to a stairwell, however, it became clear that the smell was coming from beneath the steps. Something had been forced deep into the narrow space and partially covered. The employee called the police. What officers discovered would connect Mitchell's final recording to a stranger captured on cameras throughout downtown Atlanta. But the investigation did not begin with the man on the cameras. It began with a family waiting for Mitchell to come home.
Hey guys, I'm here with Maggie. It's her last day of 9th grade and we passed with flying great. We did good. She did
not
good
flying
this
colors.
year.
Yeah. Get it right.
No, but
Okay.
yeah.
We're
So she did great. And we got Wingstop. It's her first time. So the Wingstop.
Mitchell Dang lived in Norcross, Georgia, with her parents and her 2 sisters, Mary and Maggie. Her parents had moved to the United States from Vietnam after the war, building a new life around a family that remained closely connected. As the 3 daughters grew older, Mitchell was the middle sister. Maggie remembered her as a role model and someone she could approach for advice, particularly about relationships and the ordinary complications of growing up.
Hi guys. So I'm going to attempt to vlog today. Oh, I just went the wrong way. Actually, I'm just gonna go this way. I brought my camera and everything. I feel like today could be like a good day to vlog. So the things I'm gonna try to overcome is my fear of vlogging in public spaces. Yeah, so let's just do this together.
Mitchell also enjoyed recording parts of her life. Her videos included personal updates, preparations for nights out, and moments that might otherwise have passed without being preserved. Saturday, August 26th, began without any indication that it would become significant. The Dang family ate dinner together. Afterward, Mitchell asked her mother whether she could travel into downtown Atlanta to meet friends and attend an Alley Cat event at Club Future in underground Atlanta. The event was built around house and techno music, exactly the kind of environment where Mitchell could spend the evening dancing. Before leaving, she recorded the outfit video that would become the final known footage she created at home. Mitchell traveled into Atlanta and attended the event. She did not return to Norcross that night. Her family was not immediately alarmed. Mitchell was 25 years old, and although she lived at home, it was reasonable to believe that she might have stayed with friends after leaving the venue. They gave her space and expected that she would eventually walk back through the door. Sunday passed. Then Monday arrived, and Mitchell still had not come home. Calls and messages received no response. The explanation that had initially seemed ordinary was becoming increasingly difficult to accept. Somewhere between the music venue and the journey home, Mitchell had disappeared. At approximately 7 o'clock on the morning of Wednesday, August 30th, an employee began cleaning inside a parking garage on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. The structure stood in the center of downtown Atlanta, close to underground Atlanta's music venues, and directly across from the Fulton County Courthouse. Near the elevator, the employee noticed a powerful smell. His first thought was that a rat or another animal had died somewhere inside the building. He continued working, but the smell became stronger as he approached a stairwell on level 1A. When he looked beneath the steps, he saw something hidden inside the narrow space. The employee kept his distance and contacted the authorities. Atlanta police officers arrived to investigate what had initially been reported as a person down call. Beneath the staircase, they found the body of a small woman who had been pushed far enough into the space that she would not have been immediately visible to someone walking past. Part of her head had been covered with newspaper, her clothing was missing, and the condition of the scene indicated that she had been there for some time. This was not someone who had simply collapsed inside the garage. Her position, the attempt to cover her and the removal of her belongings, all suggested deliberate concealment. There was also an immediate problem with the building's security. Staff reportedly told officers that the stairwell had been checked the previous evening and that nothing unusual had been noticed. The employee who made the discovery struggled to believe that anyone could have walked through the area without detecting the smell. Even if the woman remained difficult to see beneath the steps, the conditions around the stairwell should have drawn attention. Investigators therefore faced two separate questions. Who was the woman beneath the stairs? And how had she remained undiscovered inside a public parking structure for several days? The first useful answer was still attached to her wrist. Officers found a band from an Alley Cat music event. The wristband gave investigators a place and a date from which to begin working backward. Alley Cat had hosted an event inside the underground Atlanta complex on Saturday, August 26th. The garage was close enough to the venue for someone leaving the event to reach it on foot, and only 4 days had passed since that night. Police could now compare the unidentified woman with people recently reported missing after attending the event. That process led them to Mitchell Dang. The woman beneath the staircase was the 25-year-old whose family had spent the previous days trying to understand why she had not returned home. The identification explained the wristband, but it created another problem. Mitchell's vehicle was not parked inside the garage where she had been found. She had no obvious reason to enter that structure while attempting to return to her own car. Her phone, keys, and wallet were also missing. This changed the direction of the investigation. Detectives were no longer looking only at what had happened beneath the staircase. They needed to establish how Mitchell had traveled from the music event to a garage she had not used, who had accompanied her and why she had never been seen leaving. Downtown Atlanta contained cameras operated by venues, businesses, the parking garage, and the city's transport network. Together, those recordings offered a way to rebuild the missing hours after Mitchell left the dance floor. The first images showed that she had not been alone. A stranger had approached her outside the venue and offered to help. The surveillance footage allowed detectives to follow Mitchell beyond the doors of the venue and into the streets surrounding underground Atlanta. She appeared to be unsteady and had become separated from the people she had been with earlier in the night. As Mitchell moved through the area, a man approached her and offered assistance. She did not immediately accept. According to the reconstructed sequence, Mitchell told him to get away from her and continued walking. The man did not leave. He followed Mitchell, continued speaking to her, and repeatedly presented himself as someone trying to help. Mitchell was having difficulty locating her vehicle, and after initially rejecting him, she eventually allowed the stranger to assist with the search. That decision placed him in control of the situation. He came into possession of Mitchell's keys and phone while walking beside her. What appeared from a distance to be an ordinary act of assistance gave him access to the two things she needed to find her vehicle, contact her family, or call for help. The footage also established that Mitchell had originally been moving in the direction of Atlanta's MARTA transport system. At some point after the stranger joined her, that route changed. Instead of continuing toward public transportation or reaching the location where her car had actually been left, Mitchell was guided toward the parking structure on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. The garage was not a random detail discovered after the event. Cameras recorded Mitchell and the man approaching it together. They entered the stairwell. Mitchell, though, was never recorded leaving. The stranger eventually emerged alone and continued away from the building. At that stage, the footage could not show investigators exactly what had happened beyond the stairwell door, but it established a narrow period during which Mitchell vanished from public view. It also captured something unexpected. After leaving, the man turned around and returned to the garage. He entered the area again, remained there briefly, and then departed for a second time. Investigators now knew that the stranger had not simply accompanied Mitchell to the building and continued on his way. He had entered the stairwell with her, left without her, and then made a deliberate journey back. Whatever had happened beneath the stairs, the man appeared to believe that something important remained there. The cameras could not explain what he had gone back to recover. They could, however, continue following him. Detectives began assembling recordings from across downtown Atlanta. A single camera could show only one fragment of the journey, but footage from the garage, nearby streets and the MARTA system allowed investigators to connect the stranger's movements after he left Mitchell. The man traveled away from the area using public transportation. Cameras provided clearer views of his face, clothing, hairstyle, physical build, and the way he walked. Mitchell's missing property created an additional trail. Her credit card was used after her disappearance, while her damaged phone and clothing were discarded separately. The activity surrounding those belongings supported the conclusion that the man seen leaving the stairwell had not merely witnessed Mitchell's disappearance. He had actually left with her property, meaning that somehow he obtained it from her. Investigators eventually obtained images clear enough to show to someone who knew the man personally, and his grandmother recognized him. She identified the person in the recordings from his body shape, hairstyle, and distinctive walk. Although she reportedly had not seen him for several years, she said the man captured by the cameras was her grandson, and that man's name was Jacavius Michael Arnold. The identification gave detectives a suspect, but it was not the only evidence connecting Arnold to the garage. The individual who had first appeared to be a stranger offering assistance could now be traced across the city, but police still needed to find him. On September 22nd, almost 4 weeks after Mitchell was discovered, that search led officers to an animal services facility outside Atlanta.
First or second? Rio.
On the ground. On the ground now, mother. Get on the ground. On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. You understand me?
Arnold was found at the DeKalb County Animal Services building in Chamblee, where he had been assigned through a temporary employment agency. His girlfriend also worked at the facility. Officers entered a staff area and ordered Arnold to the ground. The arrest itself ended without a prolonged struggle, but his behavior changed almost immediately once he was restrained. Arnold began apologizing. He described himself as a horrible person and said he needed to be imprisoned.
Sir, forgive me. I'm sorry. It was an accident, sir. Sir, can you look at me, sir? I wasn't trying to. I should have just took myself in, sir. I'm sorry. I really am. Thank you for forgiving me.
At one point, he told an officer that he needed to go away for a long time. Those remarks were not a complete confession, and they did not explain what had happened to Mitchell. They were significant because Arnold appeared to understand that the officers had arrived in connection with something far more serious than a routine arrest. Before being taken away, he repeatedly asked for an opportunity to speak with his girlfriend.
Thank you. Could I just say one thing? What do you want? Just to my girlfriend, please. Just one thing. Just one thing, sir.
Can you take that? Can you follow him down? I'm going to do some stuff up here.
Yeah.
Do you have a locker in here?
Yes, I do.
Where's your locker at?
It's K's number. It's down below. It's right by the break room.
Okay. Just give us a second. We'll talk to you, okay?
Can I say one thing to my girlfriend?
Officers instead secured him inside a police vehicle and transported him to the Fulton County Jail. Arnold initially faced charges including murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Additional charges followed as investigators examined the stairwell, Mitchell's missing property, and the evidence collected from her body. What they still needed was an explanation, and Arnold, he gave them one. Arnold said he first encountered Mitchell near the 5 Points MARTA station. He acknowledged that she appeared unsteady and that she initially rejected his offer of help. Mitchell told him to leave her alone. Arnold admitted that he continued following her and repeatedly offered to help locate her vehicle until she eventually accepted. He took possession of her phone and keys while presenting himself as someone guiding her to safety. According to Arnold's account, they entered the parking garage and moved into the stairwell. Once they were away from the street and outside the view of most cameras, he forced Mitchell beneath the stairs, restrained her and applied pressure to her neck. He also admitted to seriously violating her. When Mitchell eventually regained consciousness, Arnold applied the pressure again until her time on this earth ended. He then attempted to remove evidence. Arnold said he took Mitchell's clothing because he understood that it could contain DNA. He placed the clothing into a bag, damaged her phone, and later discarded the items at separate locations in downtown Atlanta. Mitchell was pushed farther beneath the staircase. Newspaper was placed over part of her head, reducing the chance that someone passing through the stairwell would immediately notice her. Arnold then left the garage. A short time later, he realized that his sunglasses were missing. He believed he had left them beneath the stairs. Arnold returned to the garage, moved Mitchell's body, recovered the sunglasses and concealed her more deeply before leaving for a second time. That admission explained one of the most important unexplained movements in the surveillance footage. Detectives had already watched the man leave the garage and then return. Arnold had now provided a reason for that journey. He also described details that police had not released publicly, including the newspaper and the way Mitchell had been positioned beneath the staircase. The evidence was no longer limited to the fact that Arnold had been the last person seen with Mitchell. His own account matched actions captured on camera and features of the scene that only investigators and the person responsible were expected to know. Then Arnold told detectives that Mitchell was not the first woman he had approached in this way. Arnold claimed that he had previously approached 2 other women in a similar way. Both were alone at night, and in both accounts he began by offering help before attempting to move them away from the public view. One woman reportedly escaped after using mace. Arnold claimed that he left another woman in a wooded area while she was still breathing, although investigators had not identified her or confirmed what happened. DeKalb County Police were asked to determine whether his statements matched earlier reports. The claims did not establish a confirmed number of additional victims. They did, however, suggest that the method used against Mitchell may not have begun that night. Mitchell's family created a Buddhist shrine in her honor and kept it in place for 49 days. At night, her parents and sisters slept together in the family room because separating made the emptiness harder to endure. They also questioned how Mitchell could be attacked and concealed for days inside a public garage, surrounded by venues, transport links, and the county courthouse. By sharing her story, they hoped improved security might prevent another family experiencing the same loss. Arnold ultimately pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison in March 2026.